watching LSCC TV, a broadcast service of Lake Sumter Community College, Leesburg.
Hello again, and welcome to our program called Combat Veterans. I'm Ron Regan, your host today, and my guest today, or our guest today, is Bill Jones from Tavares, and he has a great story to tell, a really terrific story.
We were just quiet, peace-loving young men, average age probably 19 and a half, thrust into mortal combat.
We did have no idea where the heck we was going. We thought we was going to Africa. We had no idea. And then they come and told us that we was heading to Attu. We was on an invasion force.
My first impression of Attu, God, what did you ever send me here for?
Who knows of Attu Island except a very small percentage of people in this world? How much can a human being take? It's so horrendous that I don't think my vocabulary is sufficient to explain what it's like to be there.
Okay, I think we're ready. You ready?
I'm ready.
This is it. Okay, everybody sing with us now, you know that song.
Turn around the other way. Put the blue that way.
Yeah, switch it around. Yeah. Everybody. Beautiful for spacious land, for amber waves of grain, for purple lands.
I was nothing but a farm boy from South Jersey, 19 years old when I enlisted. I was laying on the living room floor at my girlfriend's when they announced that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. The next morning, Monday morning, I went up to the Customs House in Philadelphia and tried to enlist, but I didn't have a birth certificate, and I couldn't, they wouldn't accept my word because I looked so young. They thought I was underage. So I had to take my folks back the next morning to enlist, and I did. Here I was, an old farm boy from South Jersey, and going into combat, and it's an experience that you can not anticipate, neither can you ever forget. There's too many things about it that you just, if you live 200 years, you couldn't forget it. That's all, simple as that. I can't help but believe that it changed my personality a bit, but I have no way of measuring and knowing how much it changed it. They asked, a lot of people asked, do you have any nightmares or what have you? And I had some nightmares for about a year and a half. When you use a flamethrower on somebody and they're on fire and they scream. It's inhuman, and these things disturb me. I just went on with life. I got married 10 days after I got home, and nobody ever said anything that I acted odd or different or anything of that nature. So I just, I don't know. It didn't affect me at all, to the best of my knowledge.
When they go back to the battlefield, there's something that you notice. There's an intentness and an alertness that comes into their minds and their hearts. That warrior thing runs very deep with them. You see it in the eyes of people who've actually fought hand-to-hand combat against a mortal enemy. And they saw people to the left and right of them die, so they've never ever forgotten those moments. It's been something that's forever etched in their minds. It's hard to find a way to have peace in your heart and in your mind. It just is. It's a soulful thing, and it's a search that an individual has to go on. It's another journey, and it's beyond the battlefield.
I had to leave at 6:55 Orlando, Florida. Flew to Houston, changed planes. Flew to Seattle, changed planes. Flew to Anchorage, changed planes. I don't usually go 23 hours without sleeping. It'll be rewarding to go back under the circumstances we're going back now as compared to 60 years ago. I'm very enthused about coming out here. Excited, I'd say, for an old 81-year-old man.
Well, the only thing I couldn't figure out is how in the heck did we survive it?
Yeah.
With the equipment we had?
This time we've got heavy underwear, jackets, mufflers, gloves, earmuffs. The reason you didn't hear anything, the American government didn't want the American people to know that the Japanese were on American soil. That too, of course, being American soil. And they had landed there in 1942, and we had to get rid of them. They were on our soil. There's no question about what we had to do about it.
If you are Japanese, you believe you have been commanded by heaven to conquer all other races and peoples and put them under a Japanese rule. And when the orange groves of California and the cotton fields of Alabama were part of Japan's empire, when the factories of Los Angeles and Detroit were producing for Japan's war machine, then the rest of the world would fall like a ripe plum, and the Japs would have fulfilled Jimu's divine commandment.
We can land in the Puget Sound and Columbia River, the vicinity of San Francisco, and the vicinity of Los Angeles.
I think people are used to looking at a flat map, and on a flat map, if you look at the distance, say, from Washington, D.C. to Tokyo, the shortest distance between the 2 points is a straight line that takes you right through San Francisco. But if you look on the globe, that line is an arc, and instead of going through San Francisco, it takes you right over the top of Anchorage. So although we seem up here to be in the middle of nowhere, we're actually, if you were going to bomb the United States from Tokyo, if you were going to make an invasion on the west coast of the United States, the place you would come closest to would be the Aleutians.
The Aleutians are a string of island bases extending over 1,000 miles westward from the Alaskan Peninsula. These islands, the Japs once considered a back door to the United States. But when the door was opened... Oh, forget about incident. And now our back door is a front door to Tokyo.
The village of Attu was on the opposite side of the island from Massacre Bay. It was in a very small bay called Chichagof Harbor. The village had maybe a dozen buildings. There were only 44 people there. The church would have been the largest one, and a company store and a warehouse for storing furs. The Japanese arrived on the island on the morning of June 7th. When the Japanese took over the village, the Japanese announced to everyone in the village that they were all Japanese citizens now. And eventually they announced to the local people that they were going to be moved to Japan.
They put everybody's name in a sack. They drawed your names out. Part of them went to Germany, part of them went to Aleutian Islands.
Got on a ship, places unknown.
We start out and we go west under the Golden Gate Bridge.
Golden Gate Bridge, of course, I just followed backwards. I hope I wouldn't see it again.
Even the trip out there, we almost lost our lives.
And about the third day out, we run into a terrific storm.
And I had no idea as to how mean the mean waters could be, and those particular waters out there, the roughest water in the world.
We're all privates, and every one of us was violently ill. People got to the point where they didn't have the decency to get up and retch someplace and just lay there cursing and retching. The stern was coming up, the screws were coming out of the water, bow was going up, the ship would be pitching. It was so bizarre.
And we looked over the boat and we seen this big thing floating down there that had spikes on the side of it. And it was a Jap mine, a loose one. And the destroyer went back and he blew that mine up. And I swear that there was a hole in an ocean out there as big as, oh, you could throw a small factory in it.
2 weeks later, we were still out there in the storm, nowhere. Nobody knew where we were. That was quite an ordeal for a young 20-year-old boy that grew up on a farm.
Boys ready to go? Yep. We're ready. You ready?
We're ready.
Turn them loose. Turn them loose. It's going to be interesting.
All right. Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Oh, nobody's shooting at us this time. It don't seem real to be back here after 60 years. This doesn't feel. You've been thinking about it and thinking about it, and your mind's been going. Now we got our feet on the ground. Yeah, you stand in the sun over here. Well, take another one. This is the plaque that, these are my words. I wrote them. They never mounted that thing yet. I got tears in my eyes. In the year 2000, Al King came up with an idea of our doing something of some nature to honor the men that died there. So he caused a plaque to be made up to be put on this piece of granite we found up there. And I was honored to have been the person asked to write the words that are this plaque inscribed and placed here by those who fought by your side or served in the defense of this island. They're on that plaque during World War II to honor the boys, men, who prematurely gave their lives during the Battle of Attu, and in remembrance of the mothers, fathers, wives, and the children, and the sweethearts whose lives were ever changed due to their loss. And then in 2001, 5 or 6 veterans came up here and they dedicated this plaque and held a memorial service. Those words came from my heart. Yep. They weren't forgotten. They weren't forgotten.
Candy, aftershave lotion. Candy. Space Mars.
What's that all about?
I don't know. I think that's one of the bags the children had around the house. There are people visiting me and stuff.
That is my all-purpose notebook. The name and address of the pilot and co-pilot of our C-130 when we flew out here. Heights of the different ridges and mountains and so forth, the terrain here.
A friend of ours knitted this a long time ago, but I used it for sleeping at night just to give me complete darkness. Pull it down over my eyes, and that way I can sleep without no vision at all. I mean, as far as any light coming in.
The name of the regional director of the U.S. Field and Wildlife Service, and I have the populations of the different major towns in Alaska, which I'll need to refer to for one thing or another.
It looks like some sort of a shot of the universe, different not the stars and stuff, but Jupiter, planets, I guess.
None of us were used to this snow and ice. We took our training in the sand and nothing like that up there.
3 days we would bivouac, and 3 days we would maneuver, doing all the things that you do in combat in the desert.
And we was out about 2 days out.
And then he come and told us that we was heading to Attu. We was on an invasion force.
And we was told we was going to the Aleutian Islands. I never heard of it before in my whole life.
And then they start telling us you'll have 20 hours of daylight and 4 hours of darkness.
We have never even heard of the island of Attu. But then they explained to us that the island of Attu was held by the Japanese.
Where are you? Physically, you're located on Attu Island. Attu Island is the very last of the Aleutian Islands that the U.S. owns. We are closer to Russia than we are to mainland United States, even to Alaska. Between us and Russia is about 300 to 400 miles. Between us and coastal Alaska is about 1,500 miles.
Look where we are. We're where the Pacific and the Bering Sea meet the most. We are so far in the Western Hemisphere, Attu is in the Eastern Hemisphere. Who knows of Attu Island except a very tiny, small percentage of people in this world? I've mentioned the word, in conversation with people. Oh, it's on Attu Island. Where is that? Nobody knows where Attu Island is.
Of course, in any military operation, secrecy is important. And Army didn't want to let people know where they were going because of the problem of leaks. And obviously, if they provided them with the gear they would need in this climate, just providing the gear would instantly tell people exactly where they were going. And so, by and large, they weren't provided with it.
We couldn't understand because of the fact that they had given us only field jackets, 4-pocket field jackets.
There's General Brown. He issued logger boots due to the fact that he thought he would take the island within 36 hours, see?
It doesn't look like they were cautioned about such things as hypothermia and the danger of frostbite and trench foot and that sort of thing.
We went there with khaki clothes and do the best you can, bud.
There's 20 people out here who maintain a Loran C signal. It's also an isolated duty station here, so my chances of getting back are very slim. It's a one-year duty assignment without your family, and I'll probably never get a chance to get back out here.
This island is a World War II relic. They can't clean up the place because it's a national monument, it's a national battlefield. So everything that's here will stay here. The debris that was left by the war and the occupation of the island when the U.S. forces was here, lots and lots of rusty metal. Fuel tanks, old buildings that have collapsed, you name it, we've got it out here.
I don't think the island's haunted. Some people think it is, though, with as many people that died out here. And not just our soldiers and the Japanese soldiers, but the original Aleutians that were out here murdered by some of the Russian fur traders.
We was in Massacre Bay the day of the invasion.
They got us up and we had steak and eggs for breakfast. It was like our last supper breakfast. And we got in our boats, I would suppose, around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
We went over, climbed down a rope ladder.
The water was going up and down. It was going to be pretty difficult to hold on to the nets and hold on to the boats and hold on to your equipment and everything going down the nets. A lot of people fell. I know it got nasty, but that's what they tried to teach us.
There was absolutely nothing laying out there in the fog.
We circled for 5, 6, 7 hours before we finally could find the beach. We couldn't find it.
Something went wrong that we had to float. Float around for about 4 hours.
Boy, it got cold.
It was windy. It's just plain old cold.
Circling in our assault boats, waiting for the word to go to the beach.
You wonder, what am I doing here? Ask your mother, what am I doing here, Ma? You know.
Not that we have a closed union or anything, but unless you've been in battle and been in the front lines and in front of the front lines, you can't really talk to anybody. They can't understand. It's like you're trying to describe a picture to someone. You can't adequately describe what they would see with their own eyes.
Well, this pass is well worn. They must have quite a few visitors come up here to beat the grass.
Yep.
Read the flag, Jonesy.
In memory of all those who sacrificed their lives in the islands and seas of the North Pacific during World War II, and in dedication to world peace. Constructed by the government of Japan in cooperation with the government of the United States of America on 1 July 1987.
Back in the late 70s, early 80s, the Japanese government came up with a plan that they executed across the Pacific. My understanding is there's 11 locations where there were major campaigns or battles where these monuments had been placed. They're all the same exact monument, these titanium starbursts. Their goal there was to try to devise or find some sort of a national way to express their regret for what happened in the war.
God, this doesn't look like it weighs 2 tons either.
2, 6.
Not no $350,000 they said they paid for it. The pictures show it and everything else, but
it's in the wrong place. It don't belong on Attu Island. It don't belong on Engineer Hill. This is where they came. And then had the audacity to ask our government.
I think the gesture is a good gesture. It's a genuine gesture. They didn't do it for a PR ploy. It's nothing that you could even equate to that.
These people that you talk to, I'm sure, were not frontline infantry people here that went through what we went through. And they certainly couldn't feel what we feel.
I've been up on the hill with other veterans who have found peace and who have commented on what a beautiful symbol that truly is.
Had you been here and went through what we went through for 19 days, it would not be difficult to understand what we have against that thing being there. I have set up a 3-phase program, and before I get done, the world's going to know that this monument is here and that it should be removed. They stole the island from us. I don't know how I can get that point across. They stole it, came here, and killed all of our men and maimed them, suffered through frozen feet, and then had the audacity to come here and put a memorial to their dead soldiers who took their own lives. Instead of dying on the battlefield, give us another 24 hours, we'd have let them die honorably. That's why I'm so strong about getting that monument removed. Andy and I kind of got along real good. Andy was nice enough to, he had the lower bunk, and he asked me, he says, you want the upper or the lower? Naturally, I said, I'd like to have a lower, and Andy said, no sweat, and he took the upper bunk, so we were friends right on.
I got a rat here, something that the dogs have captured. There's about 8 dead ones here that they haven't eaten yet, and they look very good shape, just look like they froze.
We've kept in touch. We call each other 3-4 times a year. When you go through what Andy and I went through together, there's a bond. There's a bond between men that experienced what we did together.
The sun rises in the east, doesn't it?
Yeah, supposedly. Yeah, that's east. This is south. Here's south, right off this direction.
Is that right?
Yeah. Chief, when we landed here, you see the big rock out there in the middle of Massacre Bay? Mm-hmm. I was alongside of another landing craft coming in here about 10 or 12 foot away. He hit it because he couldn't see it because of the fog. When he hit the rock, he laid the ramp down. About 10 or 12 of our guys drowned. They were our first casualties on that too, I believe. You're on the beach at Massacre Bay. This is the beach we landed on May 11th, 1943, 60 years ago. I think we went a little bit faster than this that day. I'm glad it wasn't this bright and clear in May the 11th, 1943.
Why?
Because the Japanese would have been able to see us with their artillery and anti-aircraft guns. And they were known to use anti-aircraft guns against ground troops. They couldn't see us, they could hear us. We never got fired on until late in the afternoon.
Everything was just quiet and peaceful until finally somebody hollered that there was a dead Jap up ahead there, and there was a gentleman laying down he had a hole down there at the bottom in the foxhole, and never could figure out. And he had on hip boots and stuff, and we had on our boots, and everything didn't make sense.
Here we are. As we go up the hogback and we talk more, I'll tell you more about what took place here, what took place there, as far as I remember. It's amazing to me that at my age I'm still able to take the trip that it takes to get up here and to be able to come down here with the slight health condition that I have and be able to be part of this. It's very nice, very nice.
What's your health condition?
Well, I have emphysema. Too many cigarettes for too many years. But I did quit 30 years ago. The Lord's been good to me.
Come on, LD, get moving. Ready to go. As a rule, I work out 6 days a week for about an hour and a half. Ready to go. What time's the game start?
The biggest factor in anything out on the Aleutians is always the weather. The Weather controls everything.
It can go from being partly cloudy to having an absolute horrible snowstorm in about 5 minutes.
Our highest clocked wind speed is about 180 miles an hour officially.
You'll hear this every person that you talk to about the Aleutians. They'll talk about a willy wall, which is the Aleut name for a hurricane.
It has snow, has rain, has fog, sleet, you name it, it's got it.
It was really a ridiculous thing as far as we were concerned. We had no training of anything like this.
There was absolutely nothing laying out there in the fog, looking at that fog.
And the fog up here would drop down to around the 50, 70 foot level, and then it would raise up to the 300 or 400 foot level.
And I can only imagine what it must be like when you're trying to wander around in that stuff. You have a mortal enemy that you're seeking out, and he is waiting for you to come his way.
They had built their defenses up on the side of these ridges. And when the fog came down, they couldn't see us. And then when the fog raised up, their snipers picked us off one by one. We lost many troops, just single troops at a time. We weren't in an assault mode or what have you. We were just walking around.
Snipers were expert at what they were doing. They were 1 or 2 man death machines.
It's just the idea that you're under fire and the main thing you want to do is try to stay as flat as you can and hope that it keeps passing over you, because you can hear the bullets hitting alongside you, just little puff, 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 just like little hail coming down.
And they had plotted out the distances across the passes and down the trails and so forth, so they had a good vision of where any of their potential enemy would be, the Americans.
The Japanese always had the high ground during the entire Battle of that too. That's an infantry commander's nightmare to have to fight an enemy that had the high ground 100% of the time.
Well, naturally, I was scared. I was more than scared. I didn't know how I felt, except that I certainly didn't like where I'm at, how the heck I ever got here and what was going to be next.
I don't think we were scared in the sense of scared, Andy. It's a high rate of anxiety.
High rate of anxiety.
This is where we started up the Hogbeck.
Does this look like the place?
Looks like it. I'm not saying this is it. Looks like it. There was absolutely not one God's blessed thing here except tundra and the flowers and bushes. And they were brown because they hadn't recovered from the winter yet.
And we decided they was going to dig in right there because we didn't know, and we didn't know how long the fog was going to be here.
They would catch us and they'd pick one of us off here and one there. So finally I said, I'm going to stand up, and when I do, you look up in that general area and see where the smoke is. I think I stupidly did this 3 or 4 times. I heard bullets hitting into the tundra grass. People never told us the fact that the Japanese used smokeless powder. That's why we couldn't see where they were firing from. But suffice to say that 2 or 3 times was enough, that kind of foolishness. I guess it was about 3 days later, while we were in this position, the company commander sent a lieutenant and myself up to find out what was holding us up on the side of one of these terrain features up here. We knew what was holding us up. It was a machine gun, but he sent us up there anyway. And a little bit of comedy. We got up there and we were pinned down, and the lieutenant says, "Go down and tell the old man we're pinned down," like I was expendable. Anyhow, I got down there, and the company commander was in a Japanese foxhole. I was in another hole here, and a Jap shell landed between us. I had a piece of shrapnel hit me in the cheek and caused a trauma to my jawbone and broke off one tooth, split it in half. And unfortunately, my company commander, whose name happened to be Jones also, no relation, he died 2 or 3 days later, we were told. Matter of fact, my folks got a telegram saying it was me. Apparently somebody got their telegrams and Jones is fixed up.
A lot of what they remember, I think, because they haven't talked about it, they haven't vocalized it, it lies buried. And when they come back there, it starts to come out. You know, you remember little details of things, and things start, you know, things that you haven't thought about in 60 years become right at the forefront of your thought.
We think that's where Little Falls National Cemetery was, where they buried all of our people. It had 2 posts up with a sign across it, Little Falls Cemetery. That's gone.
When you go one-on-one with somebody who is utterly determined to not surrender and to destroy you personally, maybe it's difficult because you're still caught in the quandary of wondering, how could this happen? Why would it happen? I lost all my friends. And it's hard to forget and forgive that on that island and in those terrible conditions. So it's truly a bitter thing.
Andy?
Wow.
This has to be where we were dug in.
Man, there was a lot of Japs here.
We're right at the top of the hogback. This is about where we held up for 4 or 5 days, right in this area. They had no maps of this island that were worth too darned, and it took them a little while to find, once they got here with the artillery, it took them quite a bit of time before they could find some spot where they could put their artillery and it wouldn't sink into the tundra. As soon as they fired one round, the legs on the artillery pieces would sink into the mud. They didn't kill any of the enemy ahead of us. Usually that's what your bombardment is for, to reduce the amount of enemy that are in front of you. We were getting fire from the Japanese, who somehow or other had gotten positions around the 300 or 400 foot level up here. I was a private when I landed, and our platoon sergeant gave me the squad, took over the squad. Finally, in about the 6th or 7th day, I was given an order to take out a machine gun that was setting up on this, about 3/4 of the way up there, as I recall. In the absence of replacements, they needed somebody to be the squad leader, and they gave me the job for our squad. And what a privilege. In the infantry, what you do, we move forward toward an objective by fire and movement. I call out the names of a couple of men in my squad, and they pick out a place 8 or 10 yards in front, and they move up real fast, and while they're moving, the rest of the men are firing to hold the enemy down. Then I call out a couple more and so forth. Thank God you were young and you can absorb shock. The first order I gave to the first man to move forward got hit about 10 yards in front of me. This gentleman got hit, and I hollered and told him to take his sulfa tablets. And I kept doing my thing, calling my men to move up, and then I noticed he hadn't taken his water to swallow his pills, and I hollered and told him to get his canteen and drink some water. I'm calling my men, keeping on the move, and I says, take some water and wash it down. See, I can't reach my canteen. Come to find out earlier this year, that's 1943, they had passed, the federal government had passed a law that anybody that was 38 years old could put in for discharge. And it just so happens that this gentleman had put in for a discharge back in the States. And it had come through. So I crawled up to him, having moved up with my squad, and I handed him my canteen, and as I did, he dropped it. A young soldier, first time in command, and in a sense responsible for the death of one of his men, to find out that this man could have gone home. He'd got hit in the groin, and he died. We went on. I took the machine gun, or we took the machine gun without any further casualties. I found out later that this gentleman had 7 children. That caused a little problem for a while. I told him I can't send him back. He got killed. Initially, right then, that doesn't affect you at all because you're right in the midst of a mission. When you're infantry, that's your job. That's your job. That's your job, and we did it. We did it.
Which way do you want it?
I want to take a picture of where I said the machine gun was.
Okay.
Who's going to prove it wasn't there, Andy?
That's right.
They're all dead.
Okay, Johnny.
Go ahead, let her go. Okay. Well, you know, you hear about soldiers coming home and having nightmares. The only nightmares I had was people on fire. Well, our country's youth is to be used to conduct their battles for them. This is ever since time began. For a couple of years, the inhuman sounds, screams that they made as they ran out the back of the pillbox. We had to defend our nation and our way of life. It wasn't. I don't consider my country used me. They used me, but they didn't abuse me. There's a difference. The screams and the screeches and so forth. It was just, I can hear them, but I can't describe them. We were attacked by somebody else done the attacking. We didn't deliberately, our country didn't send us out to wholesalely be killed. It didn't upset me at the time at all, because I'd been in combat, and I'd seen what they can do to my men, and I had no qualms whatsoever about it at the time. I thank God for the means I had to destroy them. Being with Andy again after all these years, it's been a nice experience. And I certainly can't
complain about the weather.
Can't complain about the weather or the treatment that the boys at the Coast Guard are giving us. They're giving us red carpet.
Well, it was, never seen so much sunshine on that too either.
Never. 5 straight days with sunshine. Unbelievable.
It's hard to understand if you're not out there and you're not engaged in the fighting to understand how fighting could take so long in such a short, small area. You have people fighting up 50 and 60 degree slopes. They're covered with snow. They're covered with rock. And essentially it was small unit action. It was squad by squad. Guys fought for every inch of the terrain.
Sorry about that, folks. Be sorry about nothing. Just keep her moving.
Well, that's not going to happen. Oh, this is not good. Yeah, we're stuck.
If you know the Aleutians, all it is volcanic ash with a layer of about 8 inches of tundra. It is mud. And once you break through that tundra, you just sink.
And it consists of one layer of moss on top of another layer of moss, and the bottom layer of it turns into a quagmire that you sink in up to your knees.
Keep pushing, pushing, pushing. Walk, walk if they want to walk. Don't drive a vehicle. This isn't vehicle country.
By this point, it was already apparent that the terrain was going to be a problem. Tractors that had been brought to pull artillery, they wouldn't work on the terrain.
Our supplies had to be brought to us by human carrying lines passing from one to the other. There was, I don't know, maybe a couple, 300 men stretched out passing stuff.
You would have a mile of men passing boxes one to the next. And there was an enormous pileup of supplies on the beach. And you see in a lot of the period footage, you'll see stacks and stacks of supplies lying on the beaches, waiting to get humped up into the hills.
It was impossible for them to supply us with ammunition and water and food.
And some of the guys went several days without eating anything. They're mountain climbing. It's in a cold climate, and they're burning up enormous amounts of calories.
Not only that, you're so scared you don't feel like eating. You don't have time to get hungry. You just don't feel hunger.
Go forward, Chief. God, I was lucky so many times. I was hit 11 times altogether, you know, my clothing and my body.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was hit 6 times in my body.
Was you ever down on the ground when all that flak they put up came down? And it was like hail. Boy, that thing was and you try to stand there under your helmet hoping nothing hits you. Man, I don't know how we got missed. And then we hit 2 blizzards, and we was only supposed to hit 1, they said. We was only going to be here for less than 5 days. And everything was miscalculated.
They were missing rubber boots. They were missing gloves in many instances. They were missing heavy coats. They didn't have a lot of the winter type of gear.
You had leather boots, mostly. When leather got wet, it would swell. You couldn't dry it out. There was no place to dry your feet out.
Our feet got wet. We couldn't change them. I never had my shoes off till the last day when I got back to the hospital, which they said was 16 days.
There were numerous instances of frostbite, trench foot. People weren't, they didn't have the right kind of footwear for the climate.
What was this compared to Okinawa? Twice as bad or not as bad?
Oh, no. There's no comparison at all.
This was what, 5 times as bad, 10 times as bad?
Oh, yeah.
Where shall I stop? 10 times as bad?
This is bad when you're not fighting or when just being here is bad.
You think it was 10 times as bad?
Well, sure.
As either one of those?
Right.
Was it?
Definitely. God. Everything was slick. Everything was stiff. You couldn't stand up. You couldn't do anything.
The leather soles were flat, and it would be, I suppose, like walking on leather dress shoes on a slippery sidewalk.
If you tried to get up the mountain, if you could stick your bayonet in or something to hold on to, you would, but most of the time you just slid right back down.
I admire Andy because of his discipline, his looking out for his personal health and exercising every day. Sunday too, Andy?
Sunday, day of rest, Jonesy.
Okay, good. 6 days a week he goes to the gym.
Well, I bowl on Sunday anyhow.
I call up there and his wife answers, Bad Bill, he's at the gym, he just left. And that's when I say I hate him. Not really, Andy. It's good that you...
Hey, Bill?
Yes?
Do you still have your uniform?
No, I don't. No, I seen what was happening to me, and I decided that might as well get rid of it, so I did. Don't hit me with those damn medals, Andy. Still fits in it.
The Purple Heart, the Bronze Star, same thing Bill would have identical, except he was wounded more times. These are for all the 4 different theaters of the Pacific that we had battles in because of the fact that we were in 4 different campaigns: Attu, Kwajalein, Leyte, and Okinawa.
I'm with my second family now, and they're not that particularly interested in my past experiences or what have you, so just for posterity, wherever, I decided to turn my stuff over to my youngest sister in case someday they may be interested in what the old man did.
And then we moved forward, such as we were. Our feet were just like baseball bats, and we kept moving.
When we came through here on the attack, we went around these ridges where there's a high ridge. It's called Buffalo Ridge. All I remember is that we got an order to go up that hill and knock out the Japanese soldiers that were dug in up there. When we got there and we started going up, it was about 10:30 at night. It was Buffalo Ridge was totally covered with snow, except there was some rocks in various places that hadn't been covered with snow. They were sticking up. It was difficult to get handholds, I remember that, footholds. We were sliding in the snow and grabbing a hold of the frozen snow and trying to get footholds to go up there. And about 2/3 of the way up, half of the way, or 2/3 as I recall, they started opening up on us with mortars and machine guns. They were smart. They didn't open up down it when we were down below. They waited till we got pretty well up. We lost contact and any gripping power, and we started to slide back down. And I guess that's when I got hit. When they first opened up, I got hit in the leg.
I could see things blowing, exploding, and some of it was flying over. And it looked to me like I seen somebody that was walking, and next thing I know, he was gone. And I think that's what, it must have been a mortar that hit him.
The angle of my bullet tells me, a bullet hole in my leg tells me that I was running or trying to run at the time.
So you saw Bill get hit?
I see him get hit and he gets spun around.
Threw my rifle in the air.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't going to need it anymore.
Well, no, he just went around and that was it. The main thing, I was trying to get to a place where there was no snow and where I could get behind it. And once I got there, I just laid there till it got dark.
And they had dug a slit trench and put me in that slit trench, covered me up with a blanket. And I welcomed that because I got some good sleep that night. When you're up here, the only thing between you and the enemy is a little bit of airspace. Everybody in front of you is enemy. You kill it. If you don't kill it, it kills you. I had no contact with the Japanese since I was in contact with them in World War II, and I haven't tried to reevaluate what they are. I have no dealings with them. You know, common sense tells you in your mind, if I don't kill this son of a bitch, he's going to kill me. It's as simple as that. You don't even think about it. You just do it. I disliked very much. I went to Hawaii in 1975. When I got there in 1975, I saw busload after busload of Japanese. I had no desire to try to think whether he's got a family or that's his problem. My problem is eliminate him. It was just not a thing that I like to see that many Japanese coming to American soil again. And I think that's the way I should be. You have to think. You have to have some reason for wanting to, I guess, subconsciously do. Anyhow, my job was to kill Japanese, and that's what I did.
Keep going. You were saying you have to have some reason to.
To kill another person, you know.
My father came to America to study, and he was here in California from when he was 16. And he went to college and he went to medical school. Then he met my mother here. They were married here in the United States. And then my father heard that both his parents died within a month of each other. And he was concerned about his younger sisters and brothers and felt that he should go home. Unfortunately, the war broke out. And so my father was conscripted into the Japanese army.
Of course, I read articles about that doctor and what he did. And I might mention the Japs would holler back up and say that the Babe Ruth was an SB, and one Jap said, you know, he said, I went to Japan to see my parents. I came from the University of Oregon. And I went to Japan to see my parents, and he said, here I am, right, and here I am. I said, fighting you guys, and talking just like I did.
He kept a diary, which became a very important document, because as they were losing the war, all the official papers were burned and destroyed by the commanding officers. So what my father kept became very important.
May 28, our artillery has been completely destroyed. The company at the bottom of A2 has been completely annihilated. I wonder if Commander Yanagawa and some of the men are still living. Heard they gave 400 shots of morphine to severely wounded and killed them. Ate half-fried thistle. It is a delicacy.
At a certain point, the Americans have pushed him about as far as they can push him on the ground. They don't have available air support, and the battle has been going fairly fast and furious at this point as the Japanese position has continued to collapse.
They knew that they were cut off. They were not going to be relieved, and that was going to be the end of them.
Colonel Yamasaki had other ideas. He was the commander on the island for the Japanese forces, and he gathered about 500 remaining soldiers.
Yamasaki decided that the thing that he needed to do, rather than to surrender, which was unacceptable, or to withdraw to another area, which would simply prolong the inevitable, was to counterattack.
This is the 29th day of May. The 29th day of May.
May 29, 1943. Today at 2000 hours we assembled at headquarters. The last assault to be carried out. Only 33 years of living and I am to die. I have no regrets. Banzai to the Emperor. At 1800 hours took care of all the patients with hand grenade.
They knew they were cornered and they were willing to go all the way.
It was their final commitment. They were going to win this day or they were going to die.
The number participating in this attack is a little over 1,000 to take enemy artillery position. Goodbye, Tayako, my beloved wife, who loved me to the last. Until we meet again, grant you Godspeed. Misako, who just became 4 years old, grow up unhindered. I feel sorry for you, Takiko, born February of this year and gone without seeing your father. Well then, be good. Goodbye.
The Japanese had moved quietly up almost 5 miles up the valley. Now there were American positions that they encountered along their way up that valley.
My outfit was on a little ledge facing Lake Nichols. All of a sudden we heard a bunch of screaming and hollering and they counterattacked.
They were hollering, "We die, you die, we die, you die."
They just were screaming and hollering. They had this effect. It was an effect, I guess, to try to scare them.
The old saying you hear, don't stand on in, the hell it don't. All you hear is you scare the pants off you.
But we die, you die, we die, you die, and it was continuous.
And this is where they came on their Banzai attack. There was over 1,000 of them.
Wow, that's impossible.
Their theory was, we understand, was to break through and get down to the shore, to Massacre Bay shore where our ships were. I don't know what they would have done then.
Then they came on over here. They came on over here, and they were heading for Massacre Bay. They thought the boats were going to pick them up there.
And they all had grenades strapped to their chests.
They know the game is up, and this is their way of reacting to it.
What happens is there was an American field hospital of sorts that was right there at the bottom of Engineer Hill.
The hospital clearing station tents were somewhere in this area.
That's where the gruesome things about stabbing the fellas, they couldn't get out of their bunks and so on.
They were mostly bayoneting everyone as they went through this little field hospital. A couple of the Americans survived by pretending they were dead.
I was in the center of 3 tents. They killed everybody in the tent over to the left and over to the right. And captain in our tent told us to all keep quiet and let on we were asleep in case somebody came in the tent. One man got hit in the head, but that was by accident. He was in the tent, they didn't see him, it just bolt went through there. So the captain pulled him across the opening of the tent, thinking that if the Japs opened the tent flap up, then looked in, they'd see this man laying there and think that everybody was dead in the tent and not bother coming in. One Jap did come in, he stepped over this fellow, and just as he started to look around the tent, somebody hollered outside, and he went right back out again. So those of us in this tent were saved, whereas they bayoneted and shot all the rest of them in the other 2 tents. They never stopped. I mean, they just kept right on. That's the purpose of a Banzai attack. They just run over everything and kill everything as they go.
So they kept on going down to the beach, and our artillery was firing point blank at them.
We got the call. Everyone out, up, forward. I don't know, about 300, 400 yards.
I was anti-aircraft. They only called us up to Engineer Hill because they was running out of infantry.
So that's where you hear about the cooks, the engineers, and the battery of AA guys. And he was people who were not really infantry people at all.
So we was kind of the last resort.
They were making the last stand. like Custer's Last Stand. That's just what they were doing.
It was just, you didn't know where anyone was. You just fired anything that moved, practically.
If anybody tells you that they're not scared, I would have a hard time believing it.
It was so dark and everybody was yelling and screaming that it was, you didn't know really. We may have even killed some of our own people.
At the end of the day, and at the end of this battle, there simply wasn't enough Japanese to overcome the Americans. And the Japanese, what few were left, retreated to where they'd started this Banzai.
So they came back through the tents again, and then they set fire to one of the tents, cremating the soldiers they had just bayoneted and killed.
And as the Japanese units kind of became separated from one another, you had a number of instances of mass suicide.
They were all just laying there with their chests blown open, their heads blown off, limbs. It was nothing but plain words, blood and guts. That's all that was there after the hand grenade, each man. When you get hit with a hand grenade like that, it was just a plain gory mess. And that was the end of the battle. Lasted 19 days. It's a hallowed piece of ground we're standing on. A hallowed piece of ground. Our blood, our American boys' blood, the 658 of them that died in this battle, a lot of it's shed right on this Engineer Hill. And I say the Japanese had the audacity to come to our government and ask to let this be put here.
So that was the last thing, the Banzai charge, that was the end. And the cleanup was something terrible. And they just scooped up the Japs as much as they could and dumped them in the graves and then covered them all up.
And nobody had no hard feelings to see them get stuck in the ground.
They had gold teeth. Our guys would knock their teeth out, get their teeth, cut their fingers off, get their rings.
Well, this went on for, I don't know, maybe a couple of days. It's all in a day's work when you're in battle.
There was probably a half a dozen of them that was waving a white flag, trying to surrender. And one officer hollered out, "Don't shoot," and somebody with a submachine gun or a machine gun mowed him down, and then he turned to the officer. He said, "What did you say, sir?"
It is 6 years later, and you forget some of the things that were rather harsh at the time. But it's wonderful to be young and be able to absorb the things that a young soldier absorbs in combat and walk on.
Guy was bringing his prisoner in. He said, "Look what I got here." Guy driving a bulldozer picked up a machine gun and shot him half in two. He said, "The hell with him."
It came down through command that the used guys got to take a prisoner.
Now, I don't know how many Japanese were captured to this day, but it wasn't too many.
Well, I guess that was the reason we was there, to destroy them, or to be destroyed.
You had to have been young to have experienced a lot of the things we experienced and be able to function after they took place.
The Americans are mean when they're fighting.
It's kind of weird, whatever it is. Some strange things happening in it.
Like what?
Like silly women or something. Almost like a one of them.
That's his thing, is television, and books are mine. I have no use for watching commercials all the time anymore, that what's on television particularly. I like movies, you know, some good movies or things of that nature. I watch National Geographic and something a bit educational.
Well, he just objects to commercials, and he objects to movies that he just doesn't think that some of the stuff that they show is, people shouldn't even watch it. They should only watch whatever he likes. That's what it boils down to.
I've never seen Andy read a book since I've ever known him. He watches television, though.
How much television does he watch?
Much.
Yeah, he doesn't really tire from talking about his experiences.
We visited each other over the 60 years since the Battle of Attu. Called on the phone. We call on the phone three times a year. We've just kept in touch.
I've known him long enough to understand him. Yeah, it's been a long relationship. And everything's hunky-dory, you know. Bill is Bill.
Andy came back from his frozen foot episode in the hospital. There wasn't one man left in our platoon of 48 to 52 men. I figured after Attu, if all combat was going to be like this, I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of going home. You have things that you, with a lack of a better word, that you want to release. Talk about it. A lot of the things that I'd done were so out of the ordinary that certainly no civilian who hadn't even been in the military couldn't understand where we were coming from, and I just refused to talk about it. I had no reason, just shut up about it, that's all. On the boat, to be discharged was like 90 days before the war was over. I got up on the bow of the ship, and early one morning, and for no reason whatsoever, I started to cry. You have no thoughts about him or his family or anything else. You have a threat here that's got to be eliminated. Although I didn't recognize anything at all prior to that, I just wondered, how can you stand and cry for an hour? Must have just sunk in. One-track mind. So when you're frontline infantry, you got a one-track mind. That's it. That's what you're there for. I think combat has quite an effect on you mentally. I have no regrets over any amount that I killed, and I was the there to do a job, and I've done the job to the best of my ability. That's all I can. Well, it's like I said, nobody, unless they've been there, knows. Here we go.